Hey, David Brister here with another episode of Chordplay, and this is the Chords of Lamb of God. And I've been a Lamb of God fan for a number of years. Actually, I think it was one of my students that I used to teach, many years ago. Brought in a copy of Ashes of the Wake, in his lesson, and he was like, "Can we learn some of this?" And I put it on, and I hadn't heard him yet, and I heard. And I was like, yes, we can definitely learn, some music from this band. I was, blown away. I was like, Phrygian Dominant in the middle, a metal riff. I was like, this is interesting. I mean, I was immediately hooked. First track, first listen. I was like, who in the hell is this band? I did see Lamb of God in concert. That was in Louisville, Kentucky, 2009, and they were on the Wrath tour, and it was awesome. I was really excited to see them. I was obsessed with the album Wrath. I've been obsessed with, a few of their albums. It was Lamb of God. Who else was there? Children of Bodom. Alexei Leho was great. And that was an odd tour too, because I think he actually had a broken hip. And I remember watching him play, and he barely moved, but he sang and played his ass off. And then, like, more than halfway through their set, he admitted he fell out of his bus bunk and he thought he broke his hip. But he was like, I'm still up here rocking for you guys, though. And then the crowd went crazy. But yeah, it was wild to watch him. And I thought, he was standing like almost perfectly still the entire time, right by the microphone. And then when he admitted that, I was like, oh, wow, because he almost did look like he was in pain. But anyway, that was Children of Bodom. But Lamb of God, when they came out, I think that was one of the loudest concerts I've ever heard. I mean, they were so loud. It was like a sonic boom. When they started, I was like, oh my God. All right, the first example's from Remorse from the Dead, which is on Ashes of the Wake. And it's the last song. And I'm a sucker for, these kind of moody chords and dark sounds, minor keys, kind of twisted intervals and twisted chords, ringing, open, droned, guitar chords, with open strings and stuff. I love those sounds. And Lamb of God, kind of teases you with some of those sounds. And the first time I ever heard this song, I was like, I really like this. It's got this slow build, then it starts moshing your face off, eventually. But I love this intro part. It's really cool. And by the way, we're in drop D in this lesson. All right, so it sounds something like this. And it's interesting because he's kind of using like this kind of pull off pattern on the open D string and working through this, like cycle of chords. So it basically starts off with like a D5, which is interesting, kind of playing it that way. Really interesting. And then he adds the 7th fret here on the low E string, which in drop D tuning, that's going to be an A. So that's going to create an A sus4, like that. Then it's going to move up to a B flat 5. All right, and then on the G sus2, he's basically kind of moving between the 7th fret and the 5th fret, so he kind of alternates a note there. And then he goes back up to that A sus4. And then he goes down, it's basically an F add 9. Then back to the G sus2. And then it's an E flat sharp 11. And I really like that little transition there because you're going to use the G note here on the low E string. And you're going to use the open D and open G. And that's going to help you kind of get into this little slide here between A and A sharp. And then you're going to do that little, E flat sharp 11 move. So, as far as naming the chords, it sounds, very technical, but, he's really just kind of moving through this pattern of notes using that pull off with the open D. cool guitar part. I like those moody, chords. The next example is from the song Reclamation, which is on the album Resolution. And the song's actually tuned down a half step in drop D, but I'm just going to be kind of lazy or resourceful. I don't know which way you want to look at it. I'm just going to stay in standard drop D. I've got an acoustic actually right there that's already tuned. I just don't really feel like switching guitars, and I don't want to go from acoustic to electric and yada yada yada. So I'm just going to keep all of this in drop D. But just be aware that this example and the next example are technically both a half step down in drop D. But overall, the guitar part's going to remain the same. It's just, actually on the recording, it's a half step lower. But with Reclamation, he's doing this really cool, kind of bend in a chord. And I wanted to demonstrate this, So he's kind of playing around with like a D5, and then he adds, technically, the E flat in the bass right there. And then he flips over and plays, like an F power chord, but then he grabs technically, A flat right there, and then he bends it. So then he bends it up to an A natural. So he's kind of messing with like this, minor major flavor, which is really interesting. To hear like a partial, minor chord, and then you hear the minor third being bent as the chord's, sustained. So it changes after it's strummed, which is really cool. Something like this. And I like that alteration, it almost sounds like a pedal steel or something. I like that a lot. Really cool stuff. The next example is from the song King Me, which is also from the album Resolution. And different song, but he's doing the same kind of thing with a bend, and I really like this. It's different, it's unique, So now what we're going to start with, it's like this, you're flirting with like D minor major 7, technically. Because right off the bat, he's doing the weird bend on a chord. Or a partial chord, that is. And I really like that sound. It's sour, but it has a really cool flavor to it. And then he does this little melodic thing, and then it goes to an E flat 6 over B flat. So it's like a... Which I love that chord, super moody. And then it moves to a G7, basically. And you can definitely hear this note change. And it sounds like a slide, but I usually just kind of play it that way. Where it almost kind of feels like the Hendrix chord. But that sounds like this. Really cool sequence of chords. I like it. It's very dark and mysterious. This wouldn't be a Lamb of God lesson without some, heavy distortion and crazy, power chords and chord action. So this riff actually comes from the song Hourglass, which is from Ashes in the Wake. And Ashes in the Wake is one of my favorite, Lamb of God albums. There's actually several that I really like, but that's a great, great album. And this riff is just crushing. When you hear it, it's just like, yeah, that's just, the way metal's supposed to sound, in my opinion. Like, it's heavy. It's aggressive, it's rhythmic, it's pushing, forward, and I like it. And there's this really cool, like, kind of stretch chord that he introduces. So it's basically, kind of standard drop D, power chord action. But then he does this kind of stretch voicing, like an E flat 6 right here. So it sounds like this. And basically happened right there. You could probably see that stretchy chord. E flat 6. Normally you'd think of that shape like a blues. But here it is popping up in a Lamb of God tune, but it sounds twisted right there. Because you're playing that E flat 6 against D, technically. Right? It has a very, heavy sound. And then he's doing this, super aggressive, kind of hyperactive Sabbath riff in a way. I like those riffs where it just sounds like somebody just, punches you in the face. All right, the last example here is from For Your Malice, which is from the As the Palaces Burn album. And honestly, I think this is my favorite Lamb of God song. I have a lot of favorites, but for whatever reason, like when I first heard this song and I first heard that album, it's much darker. It's got more of a raw, energy. The recording quality, is a little different, but I like it because it's really dark, a really dark album. But for some reason, when I hear this song, it just resonates. It does something to me. I don't know how to explain it. Especially if I'm in a bad mood or if I'm upset or kind of angry about something, which is not very often. But whenever I'm kind of in a foul mood, if I hear this song, it kind of like pushes my button, where it's like, yeah, and then I get kind of like riled up. I mean, not that I'm gonna, like roll over somebody's car or punch somebody or whatever. I don't roll like that. But you know what I mean? Like if I'm having kind of a bad day and I hear this song, it's like my bad day just got some, gasoline thrown on it, but I feel better. It's not like, I don't turn into the Hulk or something. Chord-wise, this is a really interesting riff because it's kind of rare to hear, big bar chords, and also like a major chord. In a metal riff, and it's very aggressive, it's very tight and kind of focused, and it sounds something like this. And I really like that sound. I mean, it sounds huge. You've got this kind of D minor shape. Let me turn the distortion down a little bit there just so we can hear the chords actually. I mean, that's like D sus2, a D sus2 flat 5. And I like that because you're keeping, the 12th fret on the A and the D. And then that 10th fret on the G and the B moves back to the 9th fret. And then, the chord kind of shifts over to a B flat over D. So even just that sequence of chords sounds amazing, just kind of strumming them like that. You could play that like on an acoustic guitar and it would sound cool, and dark. But then with all that distortion, of course, it comes to life. I really like that riff. That's awesome. All right, that's going to wrap up this episode of Chordplay. And leave some feedback and some comments. And please subscribe to Late Night Lessons. And I'll be back with some more content and material very soon. Thank you.